Welcome to the Growth Now movement. I'm your host, Justin Shank. I'm an entrepreneur, speaker, and podcaster who years ago decided to go on a journey on how to grow in all areas of my life. What I found out was it's really a matter of focusing on the 4 pillars of life: business, relationships, spirituality, and wellness. And that's what we do here. We explore how to continuously grow in those areas, all while having a ton of fun doing it. I'm really excited you're on this journey with me. Now let's get to this week's episode. This week, I sit down with Annalieses Puccini. Now, you may recognize Annalieses from the 22nd season of The Bachelor, and she also appeared on the 5th and 6th season of Bachelor in Paradise. But what you're going to learn in this episode is how deep she really is. We talk about trauma and how to heal it. We talk about escaping and being alone, but also the importance of human connection when we feel down and depressed, and those moments of really feeling like there's no hope, which obviously in today's world, a lot of people are feeling that way. So I think this episode is very timely. You're also going to learn about her entrepreneurial journey. You're also going to learn about her art and her poetry and her new book that's coming out soon. Now, before we get to the episode, I want to remind you guys that Growth Now Summit Live is right around the corner. Grab your tickets now. They're on sale, growthnowsummit.com. Come join myself, Nick Santonastasso, Chris Van Vliet, Susie Miller, and so many more to learn from some of the world's top thought leaders right here in Pennsylvania live, May 20th to 22nd, 2022. growthnowsummit.com. Grab your tickets now. And now, without further ado, let's get to the episode with Annalieses Puccini. Annalieses, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. I mean, anybody who Samantha Joy says you need to have a conversation, I usually say yes, 99.99% of the time. And I'm really excited to dive into, who you are and your backstory and kind of how you got to where you are and talk about your book that's coming out very, very shortly, which is exciting. But why don't we take a second and talk about who is Annalieses today, and then we'll break down how you got there.
Sure. So Annalieses today is having a migraine. So we'll start with that. But Annalieses today, it's interesting. Like, I meet people all the time and they'll say to me, "You've lived so many lives." And it's funny because I'm always reminded of like where I am today. In a lot of ways, I have all these own self-doubts and these like things in my head where I'm not where I want to be. But then I look at all these chapters that I've lived already, and I'm like, it's hard to judge the chapter that you're currently in, and I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I look back at these other phases I've been in life and I'm like, wow, I've accomplished so much. I've done so much. And I'm really proud of like all the things that I've done, solo traveled and been able to get through hardships and build businesses. And so then I look at where I am now and I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? But really, like, when it comes down to it, I realize that I'm just in a very like incubator stage at the moment, which I go through every once in a while. Like before you ever have these really big, exciting chapters, like you usually have to go through a little bit of this like down period to launch from. And so that's the phase that I'm in right now. So for me, like it's always a little hard to talk about it because I'm like, I don't feel like it's that exciting. I don't feel like I'm doing that much right now because I'm just in this phase of like building to really have it turn into something. And I'm excited to have conversations with people like in a year because I feel like then I'm going to be like, oh my God, all of this exciting stuff is happening. But like in the reality of it, and I think it's good to just be really truthful about that, is that like sometimes we go through these phases where we're just building a lot and we're not seeing the fruits of our labor yet. So that's where I'm at.
Yeah, no, I get that. 2021 for me has been exactly that. It's been the incubator. It's been the what's going on right now. I mean, there's a lot going on right now. It doesn't look exciting to the outside world. But come 2022, everything that I've been working on in 2021 will come to fruition. And it wasn't on purpose. It was because of COVID and then things shutting down and having to change directions and so on and so forth. And it's interesting to have another conversation with somebody there because you have done so much in the past. And so it's funny when you look at your chapter now and go, well, there's not much going on. Wait, hold on. I have to remind myself of where I came from. And I want to talk a little bit about that. And obviously anybody who has checked out The Bachelor may have seen you. You've been on, I guess there's a different type of Bachelor show. Fill me in on this. You've been on 3 seasons of The Bachelor, but not The Bachelor. Tell the audience who doesn't know a little bit about that and actually how you found yourself there. I'm always intrigued. And obviously we had Kelly Chase on the show too, but I'm always intrigued with that. How do you end up on these types of television shows? And what's the thought process going into them?
So I was on The Bachelor, and then I was on two of their spin-off shows, The Bachelor in Paradise, or I should say, one of their spin-off shows, The Bachelor in Paradise. And yeah, I mean, it was kind of, again, I think I was probably going through a little bit of like a transitional phase. I was 32 when I first went on it, and so for the Bachelor world, so everyone knows, like I was already the old lady going on at 32. Yeah, but I had so much going on in my life, but it was chaotic. And I think I really, in a way, sort of needed a little bit of like a break from my real life. And I still am not sure how I came to be on it, but throughout the years, like I had auditioned for it. I mean, probably like 15 years ago, like right out of college, and then got into a relationship. They had called me, but I never called them back because I got in a relationship. And then I don't know if I stayed in their database. I don't know if other people had been like sending in nominations for me over the years. But all of a sudden on Instagram one day, I got a message from a casting person saying, I just had 5 people in the office just say, you need to figure out how to reach this girl. And so they said, what's your number? And they called me and we had a conversation. And then I was just like, I kind of thought there's no way, because it's a big audition process. So I was like, I'm just going to have fun with it and like see if I make it to the next round. And then I made it to the next round. And then I was like, okay, well, that was fun. Like, let's see if I make it to the next round. And then I made it to the next round. It was like a 6-month casting process. And so, yeah, I was just, and I mean, so many people auditioned for it. And so I think I was doing event planning, and I really my heart wasn't in it anymore. And I wanted to do something else. And in a way, I kind of thought, well, maybe this is just like the universe sending me a sign, putting me on a path that I'm maybe more aligned with, or it's going to help open doors or whatever, which it has. And so, yeah, so then I went on.
No,
But, I always forget about this. Like I was in the process of doing a total gut job on my house. Like it was in shambles, and I left it that way with my mom. Like I remember right before leaving, and she's like, I'm like, I trust you wholeheartedly. Like if there's a huge decision to be made, I mean, she was an interior designer most of her career. So I'm like, I trust you, you got this. But yeah, I mean, I was doing an event until like 3 a.m. two nights before leaving for the show. Like I don't think I had really mentally realized like how big this was, and I had so much external stuff going on in my life that like maybe it wasn't the best time, because I couldn't relax while I was there at all. I just felt like I was not being the most responsible in my like real world, so to speak. But yeah, I'm glad I did it. And then I didn't have the best edit, and I just I learned a lot from that experience. And so then when I was offered to go on to Bachelor in Paradise, I thought this maybe seems a little bit more fun. And that's like on a beach with your sort of equal girls and guys, and you're just living together. It's like being at summer camp, it's fun. So I was like, that's fun. Let's do that. It's not a huge time commitment. And that was like a great experience for the most part. And then I met somebody on that, and then he broke up with me at the reunion show. So I feel like that's probably.
Hold on. I'm not even. So first of all, people know, obviously I've had people from reality TV on my show, and I'm not a huge fan of it, but I've always wondered when that happens, like when it happens at the reality or the reunion show, does it actually happen there live?
Yeah. So it was in front of a live audience. And
what?
I was like, the thing is looking back, I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have been as shocked, but like I was shocked just because we had conversations about it, he and I, where I was like, don't just like, if we're going through a rough patch, like let's talk it out off camera at a later date or whatever. But we had planned to spend the entire week together post reunion show. And so I was like, it's not going to happen. Like we maybe we'll like spend a couple days with each other after the show and realize like, let's go our separate ways. But it was like, he's not that dumb to do something like that. America's gonna hate him. Well, it turns out he was that dumb to do that. So
wow.
Yeah, so that happened. And I mean, it was like, again, these are all things that just they happen, and you at the time are just like, how is this my life right now? What is going on? but it did, like, it again taught me a lot, and it made me realize a lot about like relationships I was choosing, men I was choosing, how easily people can be manipulated. There was just a lot of things that it taught me. Sadly, there's a lot of lessons that like we look back and we're like, I wish I didn't have to learn this lesson over and over, but it did teach me some lessons. So yeah. And then I went on a third time because I was like, third time's a charm. I don't know why. I guess I'm just a sucker for pain, but yeah, I went on, I didn't stay on very long, and that's it. That sort of, I guess I had also like between the second and the third, I'm trying to think now if that's, yeah. So I had sort of like, I said my house remodel, and then I had been broken up with on national television. And then I had a real string of Heartbreak. So he broke up with me, 2 weeks later it aired. So it wasn't live. It was live in front of people, but it aired 2 weeks later. 2 weeks after that, my dad was rushed to the hospital. 10 days after that, he passed away. It was like a real back-to-back of really, really hard things. So I sort of took some time out for myself during that time. And then I felt like I had done so much growth and so much had changed. And so I went back. And yeah, I guess I'm trying to see the timeline of it is just like, it's so crazy because it's like mind blowing to me that all of this happened not that long ago, but it feels like forever ago at the same time. And then, yeah, after that, like I was in a series of other relationships that didn't work out. And I ended up moving to Maui for 9 months during the pandemic. So yeah, I've definitely spent, I would say the good part of the last 2 years, just really diving back into like therapy, my own growth. Maui's the heart chakra of the world. So just really getting connected with my own personal healing and getting grounded. And then that's where my book was born too, it's really funny because I think about it. I'm like, I lived there for 9 months and I was like, it was like, I birthed it. That was its incubator period during that time.
That's cool. I mean, there's so much to unpack there, right? Like going back to what you were saying originally about like, I wasn't in a space where I should have said yes to being on this show, but this opportunity arose. And sometimes opportunity shows up when we're not ready for it. And we have to be able to go, okay, yeah, I've got two choices right now, right? Like continue down this path or see where life can lead me by saying yes. And it seems like you've done that now a couple of times, whether it be with the show or something else in your life, whether it be writing the book and so on and so forth. Have you always been, I don't want to use this term, but it's the only term I know. Have you always been like a risk taker as far as like, okay, here's an opportunity, I'm going to dive in head first? Or is this something newer in your adult life where you're like, okay, I'm going to now do this?
It's really funny because I would never consider myself that. I never really considered myself like an adrenaline junkie or like, I don't know, a wanderlust or something. But more and more, I guess like we start to see patterns that have happened over the years. And I'm like, absolutely. I would consider myself an entrepreneur. And I think being an entrepreneur is being a risk taker in a lot of ways. You have that kind of all in, I'm going to go for it and, like throw it at the wall and see what sticks. And hopefully something sticks and you run with it, but that's kind of the attitude that I've had. And I've realized this recently too. I mean, maybe I haven't realized it recently. Maybe it's something I've always known, but I'm a very like, if I make my mind up about something, if I am like, I'm going to do this, I do it and I do it quick. I have this, I just get this surge of like energy and adrenaline that motivates these. Like, I remember I did a 6-month solo trip through Europe when I turned 30. And wow. It was just one of those things that was like, I went through a breakup. I hated my job. I was living in LA and I was just done with LA at the time. And so I like quit my job, packed up my things, booked a flight. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I've always been a total planner, but I was like, I'm not really going to plan this trip. I had a couple things planned. I had signed up for a couple art classes in the south of France, but I was like, I'm just going to find my way to the south of France by the end of my time. And the rest of the time, I'm just going to figure it out. And like a couple months later, I was I'm trying to think when I probably booked it. It was like October or something, and I left in December. I left in March. Sorry. I left LA in October, moved back home for a little bit, and then left for Europe in March. So it was like all very quick. And yeah, that's how I am. I like adventure, and I like pushing myself outside my comfort zone. I always just feel like that's where the magic happens. I think that's right now too, is like why I just feel like I'm in this incubator phase. I'm back in Northern California, which is home. And so whenever I'm here, it just doesn't feel like I'm doing anything, because it's like home. It's like not adventure. It's not exciting to me. And so, so I like going places. I like doing things that excite me and challenge me. And like I said, push me to like meet new people or create communities, which is like a huge thing too. So yeah, I think I am that way, which is good and bad.
No, I get it. And, you know, I don't know if I am that way. It's interesting. I take risks, but not to that extreme. Like I don't think I could ever be alone for 6 months traveling anywhere. Like maybe for a week or two, maybe. I don't like eating alone, let alone traveling alone. Go ahead.
No, I have a bunch of friends who would say to me, like-minded as you, and they would say, how do you do it? And I don't know, to me, it was always just like, I don't know, you just do it. And to me, it was always like, if you want to do something like that, you make it work, you figure it out. But I'm realizing more and more that it is a certain personality trait that I have that is different than other people. But same being said, like, I think I would have a hard time. I think I would be one of those people that would feel very stuck if I was like in a 9-to-5 job and like, I don't know, in the suburbs somewhere. I think it's like a beautiful thing to have that kind of life, and I always want that, but then I'm like, wait, could I actually do that? So I think it's like a little bit of that, like the grass is always greener, or I wish I could have what they have, but it's like, that just actually might not be conducive to who you are though.
Sure. No, that totally makes sense. You know, you'd also mentioned earlier about going through a lot of trauma, you know, from Heartbreak and your dad passing away, unfortunately, and seems sudden. And I'm so sorry they had to go through that. It's never easy, you know, and as you go through those things, there's two paths you can usually take afterwards, right? You can go and start to self-sabotage everything, and you can go down a healing path and figure out what's the trauma I'm dealing with right now? How can I heal it? And how can I progress from this thing that has happened? And obviously you had mentioned the healing path, right? And you'd mentioned the heart chakra and all these things. Tell me a little bit about that healing path and kind of what you've explored in order to become the person you are today, even through that trauma.
Yeah, I mean, my dad's passing was a lot for me to unpack. It was 2 days before my birthday. And I remember like on my birthday, somebody being like a friend of mine, just being like, I'm dragging you out. You need to come out. You need to get out, because and I know it was only 2 days, but I was already in that, like, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't eat. It was, my dad and I had a really tumultuous relationship as it was. So it was, I think we had spent 6 years not speaking to each other. And then the last 5 years of his life, getting close and building on that relationship. And so it was hard because it just felt like we were getting somewhere. Like I was getting to have a relationship with my dad, and to have that cut short was hard. I don't know why this is making me emotional, and I haven't talked about it in a bit. But how did I deal with it? I mean, I think it was a lot of therapy, to be honest. Like I saw a therapist twice a week for a while, for like an hour and a half sessions. Yeah. And I think, again, it was just because I felt like I had dealt with a lot of trauma from The Bachelor. I felt like how that depicted me, how it, I think just going through, it's funny, I talked to Kelly Chase the other day about this, but about you kind of lose who you are and your identity in that process because you're being told who you are, and you kind of get this weird identity crisis of like, I think I'm this person. Other like people close to me think I'm this person, but like America thinks I'm this other person. And and so you have this weird like, yeah, I don't know, it's weird. And it's hard to figure out like, who am I in the real world? You know, I like being on the red carpet or like whatever, but then how does that become a paycheck? How do I transition this into other things? Or So yeah, there's this weird thing that happens with being on reality TV as being your own person and being told you're something. So I think that was something I really struggled with. I think, like I said, my dad was a really difficult thing. And then I think the thing I found the most healing was therapy. And as it really just got me through my emotions. But it was a dark time. And I definitely feel like since that period, and I know we've had then COVID and all sorts of other things, but I've definitely struggled a lot more with like anxiety and depression over the last couple of years, more than I ever have in my life. And so it's still an ongoing kind of thing, but it's definitely, there's a lot of mindset that goes into, we find ourselves in these states where we feel depressed, and it's like, okay, well, what can I do? How do I get out of it? You not just sit in it and like wallow. And sometimes you need to just let yourself sit in it, because I feel like that also sometimes just feels good and we have to process it. But then there are times, like even my birthday this last year, I was really depressed around it. And I still am not sure like exactly what was triggering about it, but I was just getting to the point where I was cutting everyone out of my life. I didn't want to talk to people. People kept being like, what are we going to do? I'm like, nothing. I don't want like any attention. And that was sort of, to me, started to be a little bit of a sign of like, okay, you're pushing away people that care about you right now. So don't do that. And so it was not easy, but I think being really open and honest about when you are going through struggles and difficulties too. And I really, really value the Bachelor community for that, because I've been able to be really vocal and vulnerable publicly now. But that's what I did, like with my dad, with the show, with just this last birthday. Instead of keeping it to myself, I would share that. So I would say to my mom or my friends, like, I'm struggling right now. Like, I don't want to do these things because I'm not happy. And sometimes I couldn't necessarily, I wouldn't want to say depressed, because that just like sounds so depressing and you don't want to be depressed, but like looking back on it, I can be like, oh wait, no, I was just depressed. So I think it's really having a community of people who are going to care about you and help you get through those difficult times. I think it's, like meditation is always great. There's so many tools that we can really use, but to me, it's always been like, it's been me listening to myself and then using the people that I have around me to help me to get through these difficult times.
Hey guys, really quick. I wanted to let you know, if you haven't already heard, May 20th to 22nd, 2022, Growth Now Summit Live is finally happening. I can't wait to get in the same room with everyone and dive into business, wellness, spirituality, and relationships. I'm bringing in some of the world's top thought leaders to pour into you, to teach you, to connect with you, and build long-lasting relationships. One thing I've learned over the last 2 years is that there's nothing more important than community. So head over to growthnowsummit.com, grab your tickets today so you can come learn and hang out with me, Nick Santanastasso, Brian Bogert, Kelly Chase, Chris Van Vliet, Susie Miller, and so many more people to be announced soon. Ticket prices go up soon, so make sure you head over to growthnowsummit.com and grab your tickets now.
Yeah, and so much of what you said is just really important for people to hear, especially now, right? And a lot of what you said, I can relate, right? So I actually didn't talk to my dad for 7.5 years. He's still alive, fortunately, but my mother passed away, and when she passed away, I didn't dive right into depression. I went out and drank my face off 6 nights a week until I didn't remember the evening, right? And it wasn't until I sat in my shit and said, let me feel this, right? Because that's such an important and pivotal moment to say, okay, I'm going to allow myself to fully feel this instead of escaping in some way, shape, or form. But then also understanding that even in COVID, a lot of people are experiencing depression, anxiety, a desire to not want to see people. This is all part of what's happening in the world right now. And that's why I think this is important to kind of touch on again, and to understand that in the moments we don't want to see people is when we should probably see people, right? And so I'm so glad that you acknowledge that, right? And to understand that life is happening for us and not to us. And that's such a great thing, because what you're doing now is taking these things that you went through and you go, okay, why is this happening for me? And you're putting it into this book that's coming out shortly. I want to talk a little bit about the book and kind of why you decided that this is the next chapter of your life, and what made you want to put this piece of art into the world.
So I always say that Heartbreak was my muse, because I feel like I just went through a lot. And again, figuring out how to channel your different heartbreaks can come out in so many different ways. And it's funny how I'm a very creative person. I was a fine arts major in college, and with a specialty in painting. And so I have an art background, and I love painting. I love drawing. In my last serious relationship, we would write together a lot, and poetry and spoken word. And so I was getting more into that. And I think like during different chapters of my life, I channeled different mediums to express myself. So sometimes it's just like getting outside, sometimes it's painting, sometimes it's writing. And in this particular instance, moving to Maui, I was supposed to move with my ex, and he broke up with me 2 days before we were supposed to move.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
2 days before moving to Maui,
because
on live TV. 2 weeks
No,
before.
this is somebody else. This is somebody not from the show.
Oh, no, I know. But the fact that this is how it's going down, like, this is just crazy.
Yeah. We had spent we had spent a month in Jersey with his family, and I came back to San Francisco to pack up our things. And in those 2 weeks, he had reconnected with somebody who he didn't tell me about. But so we broke up, but I was like, well, this is still my experience, right? Like, I still have every right to go and have this adventure. And so I went still, and I was quarantined for 2 weeks in a house that we had leased for 6 months together. And so all of our things were arriving and being shipped there. And so I was like having, constant reminders. And but I was in this house by myself, and I was living in Maui. And at that time, the lockdown was so strict that even taking the trash out, you could get fined $1,500. It was like insane. And so I literally was just in this box. I was like, okay, I'm in my feelings for 2 weeks. Like, I just gotten dumped. How am I gonna not just waste this time and just like cry my face off every day, or just watch TV or something? So instead, and I was working with my therapist a lot. So he was having me do these like breathing exercises. So I'd wake up in the morning and do breathing exercise. I'd meditate. I'd read for an hour. I did all of these really productive things, work out, and then I'd look at my phone, and then I'd start my day, and I'd get up really early. So I was doing all this stuff before like 8 a.m. I'd start my day like by looking at my phone at 8 a.m. after doing all of these very mindful, like really great channeling kind of things. And so I just was like feeling like the most badass version of myself. I was like killing it during these 2 weeks. And which actually brings me back to what you were saying earlier, though, about how you could maybe go for like a week or something on your own. I know this is something I want to do like throughout the rest of my life, is give myself, and maybe it's just a weekend or something, maybe it's not 2 weeks, but like it was the most productive time I've had in a very long time, being just in a house with no distractions, just in it. And so anyways, anyone who's thinking about doing that, I highly recommend it. And actually Mark Groves talks about doing that too. And it's funny because I do feel like a lot of people being just alone somewhere, like in a cabin in the woods or whatever, and just like in it, you can get so much stuff done. So during that time, I started writing 2 books, and I wasn't really thinking I was writing books at first. I had written so much poetry. Like when we broke up, I couldn't stop thinking in poetry and spoken word. And it was like flowing out of me. And I remember on the plane ride over to Maui, the TVs were down, and I was like, what am I going to do? I can't be sitting here with my thoughts. Like I've just been broken up with, like, I'm going to be just, this is the worst. So instead I wrote for 5 hours. I didn't stop writing for 5 hours. And when I got to Maui, and I was like, I'd been sharing some of my poems with friends and family, and just because it was really therapeutic for me to do that. And they finally were like, what, like, you should be making a book. This is actually really good. And I'm like, you know what? I have like probably 300 poems at this point. Like maybe
Wow.
I should. And so I started reaching out to publishers and trying to get it published and figuring out that process, because I'd never done anything like that before, and found some publishers and just ran with it. And so it's funny. I keep a visual journal. Basically, it's like a journal that I take with me when I travel, and I'll go and sit in a park for like, especially on my solo trips, it's a good way to meet people and just be out. But I'll sit for like 2 hours on a park bench and I'll just draw. And then I'll bring my watercolors to a cafe, and then I'll watercolor it afterwards or whatever. And I'll write little sayings in it. And so it's really, it's almost like an homage to that in a lot of ways too. It's kind of, it's taking basically like different creative things that I love to do and was already doing them, and making them into a collection of my art and poetry that really is a journey through love, heartbreak, and healing. And the love, I gotta say, was the hardest one to write, because I never feel inspired to write about love when I'm in love, because I'm just like blissfully happy and I'm not in my feelings like in that way. Sure. Heartbreak, I was like, I gotta cut some of these down. So it was like too much. And then the healing, it was being in Maui. I wrote a lot of the healing ones just because it was a really inspiring place to be while I was healing. And so I'm hoping that people can use it for like as a gift to a friend who's going through a heartbreak, or somebody who has just lost their, a family member or something, and just something to kind of give them a little like encouragement that other people have gone through this. And there's some prompts in it so that they can maybe get their own feelings down and do a little of their own creative writing or their own drawing, which I think, like, if this book was out when I was going through some of my hard things, it may have been a good way for me to express myself differently than just like a journal. So that's it.
No, I love it. That's such an exciting thing. So do you have a title yet? Like, I know that everything's too TBD right now, but pretty soon it'll be out, hopefully in the next month or so. But do you have a title or anything?
I do. It's called AP Unwritten. So, and it's so funny because my mom was telling my stepbrother this like a couple months ago, and he goes, "Oh, like art and poetry." And she's like, "No, but totally, like, because my name is Annalieses Puccini, and so it was my name unwritten." I liked the idea of this, like, we always feel like we're writing our story and we have to keep writing and like moving forward, but like, it's okay to take a couple steps back. It's okay to kind of erase a little bit and unwrite something and be like, you know what? Like for me, that was maybe The Bachelor was a part of who I was seen as, and maybe a lot of those things were true about me, but it's okay for me to take a look at that in the mirror and actually like take a real hard look and go, is that a part of me that I like though? And then kind of learn from it, erase it, rewrite it, you know? Yeah. So I kind of wanted it to be this, like, this, you can write your own story at any point, you know?
No, I love it. I love it. So obviously, because of this podcast and the success that we've had, I've been able to interview some of the most successful people in the world. So my question for you is a two-part question. First, what's your definition of success? And the second part is, what are 3 things you do every single day to ensure that success for yourself?
Oh, wow. These are good ones. These are hard ones. Success. I think success for me is still, like, if I'm going to answer it personally, it's still a journey that I'm on. So it's hard for me to answer it for myself. Well, I can easily compare, which I try really hard not to compare, and I can see success in other people and I can say that's what I want. So that's where I say it's still a journey for me. I feel like I'm on this path to being the successful person that I want to be. But that's where I look at, like, I love these quotes that have people who are like in their 40s and say, I didn't get started until this, I didn't have my break until this age. Cause it's like, it really can happen for us at any phase. So I think success though is to be at every phase of your life, authentically living for where you're at that point, and not worrying about where you're supposed to be, or yeah, I've always sort of had this, like, I need to be here. I'm supposed to be here. And the older I get, the more I'm okay with, I'm really not where I thought I would be, but I'm fine with that. And I'm successful in my own way. And I need to just be grateful for the things that I have done. I don't know if that
Yeah.
makes sense at all, but
No, it makes total sense, right? Like life's a journey, and sometimes you're just enjoying the process and enjoying the moment. And I love that. So what are 3 things you do every single day? If there are things, I've had Bert Kreischer, comedian, on, he's like, I do nothing the same any day of my life. But what are 3 things you do that to ensure that potential success for yourself?
Yeah, I feel sort of similarly at the moment. Again, it's like there's times in my life where it's like I get up every day and I meditate and I do this and I do that. I would say probably one of the things is I eat a big breakfast every day. I'm like a big breakfast person, and I know if I don't have a big breakfast, it just doesn't fuel me. And I have the same thing every day. So that's like one of the very
what do you have
forming things. I do black beans, 2 egg whites, cheese, hot sauce, and avocado.
Sounds good. Sounds really good, actually.
Yeah, it's really good. And it's like, I've gotten my mom onto it too. So
love it.
I don't know. I feel like it checks all the boxes of what I need for balance. You know, there's some fiber in there, there's some protein in there, veggies. Yeah, I love it. So that's a big one, that I do every day. What are some of the other things I do every day? I try to meditate every day, but I don't. So that's just me being truthful.
No, I hear that. I don't either. I try, but I don't.
Yeah, I'm right now I'm in the process of becoming a Chopra certified coach. And so one of the courses is a meditation course. And every time I'm just like, oh my God, I feel like a fraud. I should be, but that's kind of the coach that I want to be at the same time, as I want to be somebody who's relatable and not like, you have to do all of these things every day to be successful. I think that's another thing too, is like giving yourself leniency. And success to me is not like, it's not material things at all. It's really like a mindset. And so I don't know. I think it's just like, I'm a really optimistic person and like super, bright side of life kind of person. So I would say this is not a specific thing, but this is the type of thing that I probably do at some point in some realm. Is like, for instance, I was going on a date the other day and I was just like, I hate dating. I don't want to do this. And then I'm driving up there and I was like, stop. Like, if you had a client right now, this is not the advice you would be giving at all. And so let's think about this, you know? And I like had this kind of dialogue with myself. And then I was like, okay, dating is fun. Like, you're going to have a good time. You get to be outside. You're going to meet somebody new. You get to have maybe an interesting conversation. And so I think that's something that it's a weird thing. God, I'm like breakfast and like having weird conversations with myself to sometimes when I do find myself in these negative thought processes, I try to reframe it and think about how we could think about this positively and not like get into a grumpy mood about it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, I think those are probably like the 2 things. Cuddle with my dog.
No, I love it. So I wrap up every single interview with the same question, but before we get there, how do people get a hold of you? Where do they find you online? And then I imagine we can just jump to the conclusion that the book's going to be on Amazon. So go get it on Amazon when it comes out.
Yeah. So social media is always the easiest way to get a hold of me. The hardest part of social media is that my name is hard to spell. So it's Annalise P. And then I do have an Instagram for my book. So that's a little bit easier. It's AP_unwritten. So you can find me there. And then I do have links there to my website's actually being rebuilt right now, but I have links to everything else. So you can get a hold of me that way.
Awesome. So guys, make sure you go check her out when the book comes up. Make sure you grab it. Obviously, poetry is something that's super powerful. I mean, it can get you through so many different things. And I love what your book is all about. So I'm excited to get it when it comes out. Now, like I said, I wrap up every single interview with the same question. And that is, in your life, what has been your biggest moment of growth?
Probably that 2 weeks that I was quarantined in Maui. I feel like there was so much growth that took place, and it was just the catapult for more growth.
I love it. Annalise, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey with us, and obviously sharing your gift with the world as the book comes out and changes so many lives. I can see it already. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much for being a part of the Growth Now movement. This is how you can really help me out. If you guys enjoyed this episode, please share it out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that fun stuff. And let's grow this movement to epic heights. And it's all going to be because of you guys. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next week.